In 2010, Microsoft unveiled a smartphone so different, critics called it the future. Windows Phone, with its bold live tiles and people-first design, looked ready to outshine even the iPhone. But behind this, elegance was a fatal flaw that cost billions and crushed a tech giant's dreams. What could make a stunning invention vanish almost overnight? And did Microsoft ever stand a chance against the forces that lined up to destroy it? Windows Phone's home screen didn't look like any other smartphone in 2010. Instead of a grid of static icons, it came alive with a mosaic of bold, colorful squares, live tiles, each pulsing with real-time updates. One glance showed unread texts, new emails, upcoming appointments, and social notifications, all without opening a single app. The design was inspired by the clarity of transit signs and the precision of Swiss modernism, stripped of clutter and chrome. At the center was the belief that a phone should put people and information first, not just a collection of apps, but a living dashboard for your life. Joe Belfiore, the executive who led the Windows Phone team, pushed for this radical approach. He and his designers wanted to break from the imitation leather and faux glass of Apple's skeuomorphic icons. Instead, Metro, Microsoft's code name for the design language, used sharp typography, clean lines, and motion to guide your attention. The typeface, Segoe UI, was chosen for its legibility and modern feel. Every tile had a purpose. The People Hub brought together contacts, messages, and social feeds. The calendar tile ticked forward with each appointment. The Photos tile became a moving gallery of your latest memories. Even the lock screen was dynamic, showing the next meeting or how many messages had arrived since you last checked. This wasn't just a style choice. The team obsessed over how quickly you could get information. Belfiore described it as glance and go, the idea that you could see what mattered in seconds and move on with your day. No other phone at the time offered that kind of immediacy. Apple's iPhone icons were beautiful but silent. Android's widgets were powerful but messy and inconsistent. Windows Phone's live tiles were both simple and deeply personal, updating themselves with the latest news, weather, or the song currently playing. Reviewers raved about the speed and fluidity.
Hold on a minute. If you're enjoying what you see so far, I hope you'll consider subscribing. It helps me preserve the history of these untold tech stories. Now, let's continue.
Swiping between screens felt effortless, even on cheaper hardware. The interface was so distinct that it drew double takes in public. For some, it was the first time a phone felt tailored for them, not just another device in the crowd. The promise was clear. This was a phone designed around you, not your apps. Expectations soared, not just for a new look, but for a whole new way to connect with the world through your phone. When Windows Phone 7 landed in October 2010, the reviews were glowing. Tech journalists called it the most original mobile operating system since the iPhone, with The Verge describing the interface as alive and years ahead. Swiping through the Metro U, I felt almost frictionless, even on budget hardware that would have left Android stuttering. The phone's speed and clarity impressed reviewers who were used to lag and clutter. Engadget praised the buttery smooth transitions, and AnonTech ran benchmarks showing that even entry-level Windows phones could keep up with Apple's best in everyday tasks. But it wasn't just about performance. Windows Phone offered features that Apple and Google hadn't even considered. Kids Corner, for example, let parents hand over their phone without worrying about accidental emails or in-app purchases, a feature Apple wouldn't add for years. The People Hub unified contacts, messages, and social updates into a single stream, pulling in Facebook, Twitter, and texts in one place. At a time when iPhone users juggled separate apps and Android's widgets were inconsistent, Windows Phone turned social connection into a native experience. The camera app launched in under a second, ready to capture a moment before it slipped away. Reviewers noticed that photos looked sharp and vibrant, even on mid-range Lumias. The lock screen showed missed calls, calendar events, and music controls at a glance. And with built-in Office integration,
Editing a Word document or reviewing a PowerPoint on the go felt natural, something business users had been begging for on other platforms. First impressions counted. Wired called Windows Phone the most human smartphone yet. The bold colors and sharp lines stood out in a sea of black rectangles. For users tired of endless rows of icons, Live Tiles offered something new. A phone that updated itself, that felt alive, that put people, not just apps, at the center. Expectations soared. For a brief moment, it looked like Microsoft had finally built a phone ready to challenge the giants. Walk into any phone store in late 2010, and the difference was obvious. iPhones and Androids boasted shelves full of familiar app icons: Facebook, Instagram, Angry Birds, Google Maps. Windows Phone, for all its bold colors and live updates, felt strangely empty. At launch, the Windows Phone marketplace offered about 1,000 apps. By comparison, Apple's App Store had exploded past 50,000 within its first year. Android's Store, too, was growing at a breakneck pace. But on Windows Phone, even the basics were missing. Instagram, which had become a social phenomenon on iOS, didn't arrive for Windows Phone until late 2013, and even then, it was stuck in beta. Snapchat never showed up at all. Popular games, banking apps, and productivity tools either lagged behind or never appeared. For many shoppers, the missing icons weren't just an inconvenience, they were a deal breaker. A phone without Snapchat or Instagram felt incomplete, especially to younger users who lived through their screens. Even those drawn to the Live Tiles and the People Hub hesitated at checkout, knowing their favorite apps weren't there. The numbers told the story. A year after launch, Windows Phone had about 35,000 apps in its store. Apple had 56,000 at the same point in its life, and Android was catching up fast. The app gap wasn't just about raw numbers. It was about the sense that Windows Phone was always a step behind. When a new social app trended on iOS or Android, Windows Phone users waited months, sometimes years, for a version, if one ever came. Developers, seeing the slow adoption, hesitated to invest their time. Users, seeing the empty shelves, walked away. This cycle fed on itself, making it nearly impossible for Microsoft to catch up. Even the most loyal fans found themselves switching back, just to keep up with friends and trends. For all its beauty and speed, Windows Phone's empty App Store was a silent warning. No matter how elegant the design, a smartphone without its favorite apps is just a pretty face in a crowded room. Google's influence in the smartphone world was impossible to ignore, and for Windows Phone users, it was a wall they could never climb. In January 2013, Google announced it would cut off Exchange ActiveSync support for new Windows Phone devices. For millions, this meant no seamless Gmail, calendar, or contact syncing, the very basics that made a smartphone useful. Android and iOS kept their direct lines to Google's services, but Windows Phone was left with clumsy workarounds that often broke or lagged behind. The friction didn't stop there. That same month, Windows Phone users discovered they couldn't even load Google Maps in their browsers. Google's servers blocked access, citing technical reasons about browser compatibility. Microsoft pushed back, saying their browser could handle Maps just fine. After public backlash, Google quietly restored access, but the message was clear. Windows Phone would not get the same treatment as its rivals. The most public battle came over YouTube. Microsoft's engineers built a native YouTube app for Windows Phone, trying to give users something close to what iPhone and Android owners enjoyed. In May 2013, Google sent a cease and desist letter, demanding the app be pulled within days. The reasons cited included missing ads and access to restricted videos, problems Microsoft said it was willing to fix. But Google refused to share the necessary APIs, making a full-featured app impossible. Windows Phone users were left with a stripped-down web version, missing key features like notifications, offline playback, and reliable streaming. Developers trying to bridge these gaps ran into locked doors. Google's AP is either weren't documented for Windows Phone or were actively blocked, making it nearly impossible to build reliable third-party alternatives. While Android and iOS apps grew more powerful, Windows Phone users had to settle for broken sync, missing features, and the sense that their phones were second-class citizens in Google's world. What looked like technical hurdles were, in practice, strategic choices. By denying Windows Phone equal access to core services, Gmail, Maps, YouTube, Google made Microsoft's beautiful new OS feel unfinished, no matter how polished its design. For anyone who lived online, that was a deal-breaker. In June 2012, Microsoft stood on stage and unveiled Windows Phone 8, a major leap forward, built on the same NT kernel as desktop Windows. But the excitement quickly turned to outrage. Not a single Windows Phone 7 device would get the upgrade. Even the flagship Lumia 900, launched just months earlier and sold as the future of the platform, was left behind. For early adopters and loyal fans, the news felt like a betrayal. They had bought in on the promise of a living, evolving platform, only to be told their phones were obsolete overnight. The technical explanation was blunt. Windows Phone 7 ran on the aging Windows CE kernel, a holdover from Microsoft's earliest mobile experiments. The new NT core brought support for multi-core processors, better security, and the chance to unify phones, tablets, and PCs. But it also meant none of the existing hardware could make the jump. Microsoft tried to soften the blow with Windows Phone 7.8, a cosmetic update that brought some of the new look and live tile sizes, but none of the real advances. Under the hood, nothing changed. Apps built for Windows Phone 8 wouldn't run on the old devices, and the most exciting features, like better multitasking and new hardware capabilities, remained out of reach. Developers, already frustrated by slow sales and the app gap, found themselves forced to rewrite their apps yet again. Forums filled with angry posts and abandoned projects. Some of the most passionate Windows Phone supporters simply gave up, their trust shattered. Device returns spiked, and sales collapsed. Carriers, burned by the backlash, stopped pushing Windows Phones on their shelves. The sense of momentum was gone. Inside Microsoft, the decision was justified as a necessary sacrifice for a future-proof platform. But the cost was clear. The people who had believed in Windows Phone from the start were now its harshest critics. As loyalty evaporated, the urgency to find a lifeline grew, setting the stage for Microsoft's next desperate move. Microsoft's $7.2 billion purchase of Nokia's phone division in 2013 was more than a business deal. It was a bet that world-class hardware could rescue Windows Phone. At the center of this gamble stood Stephen Elop, the former Microsoft executive who took the helm at Nokia just as its fortunes were fading. Elop believed that if anyone could build a phone that stood out, it was Nokia. The company's Lumia line was already earning praise for its design, and especially its cameras. The Lumia 1020 shipped with a 41-megapixel PureView sensor, a number unheard of in smartphones, capturing details that rivaled point-and-shoot cameras. The Lumia 920 introduced optical image stabilization, letting users snap sharp photos in low light or while moving, something iPhones and Galaxy devices struggled to match at the time. Nokia didn't just focus on the high end. The Lumia 520, launched in early 2013, became the best-selling Windows Phone ever, driving adoption in India, Latin America, and parts of Europe. Its low price and solid build quality helped push Windows Phone's market share into double digits in places like Italy and the UK. Carriers, eager for an alternative to Apple and Samsung, gave Lumia a warm reception in Europe and Asia. AT&T in the US backed the Lumia 920 with exclusive deals and marketing campaigns, hoping to break the iPhone's grip on American shelves. Inside Microsoft, the logic seemed sound. If the app gap couldn't be closed overnight, perhaps unmatched hardware could buy time. By owning Nokia, Microsoft hoped to unify software and hardware, just as Apple had done. The plan was to build phones so good that users, and maybe even developers, would reconsider Windows Phone. For a moment, the strategy looked promising. Reviewers raved about the Lumia's cameras and bold colors, But even the most beautiful phone can't thrive in an empty ecosystem. As the excitement faded, it became clear that hardware alone wasn't enough to turn the tide. By 2015, the writing was on the wall. Windows Phone's global market share had slipped below 1%, a number so small it barely registered in sales charts. The Lumia line, once a symbol of hope, sat unsold in warehouses and on store shelves. The App Store, despite years of effort, still couldn't attract the titles people wanted. Developers had moved on. Carriers dropped support. Even die-hard fans began to admit defeat. Satya Nadella, who took over as Microsoft CEO in 2014, faced a reality his predecessors had tried to avoid. In July 2015, he made the call that would end the experiment for good. Microsoft announced a massive write-down, $7.6 billion, nearly the entire value of the Nokia acquisition, wiped from the books in a single stroke. Alongside the accounting hit, nearly 8,000 employees lost their jobs, most of them from the mobile division. Factories shuttered. The phone business, once seen as Microsoft's path to relevance in the post-PC era, was now a liability to be contained. Internal meetings had made the outlook clear. There was no path to meaningful recovery. The market had moved on, and the Windows Phone brand became a cautionary tale. Nadella, in a memo to staff, put it bluntly, "We cannot chase runaway trains. Mobile is lost, but with the cloud, every device can be ours." The shutdown was swift. No new flagship devices would be developed. Software updates slowed to a trickle. Partners and customers received notice that support would wind down. For Microsoft, the dream of a third ecosystem was over. Windows Phone, once hailed as a bold alternative, was now officially counted among tech's most expensive failures. In 2015, Microsoft wrote off over $7 billion from its Nokia acquisition, marking the end of Windows Phone's decade-long journey. Documents and interviews confirmed that despite critical praise for its Metro design and standout features like Live Tiles, the platform never overcame the app gap or Google's service blockade. Microsoft's decision to leave early adopters behind with the Windows Phone 8 upgrade further eroded trust, while internal memos reveal the scale of developer frustration. Yet, some questions remain, such as what might have changed if Google had supported the platform, or if Microsoft had handled developer relations differently. Today, Microsoft's top apps run on iOS and Android, a direct outcome of this era. The evidence shows that even the best technology can fail without the right ecosystem. Windows Phone stands as a documented lesson. Innovation alone is not enough to win the mobile world. Thank you for watching. I'd be genuinely interested in hearing your opinion on this in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this, please make sure to subscribe. There's much more to come.